I am really pleased to be with you this morning. My name is Laura, and I serve as the Transitional Executive Presbyter of the Presbytery of San Francisco, and I bring my greetings and the greetings from the Presbytery to all of you, because you are a member of a presbytery that spans 4 counties, San Francisco, San Mateo, Contra Costa, and Alameda. And we have 67 congregations and 15 new worshiping communities. Your congregation shares together with others in the presbytery the responsibility to nurture, guide, and govern one another to strengthen the whole church. And this interconnection keeps us together, and it is a sign of the unity of the church in Jesus Christ. One of the ways in which the congregations in the presbytery support each other, it's not just having meetings and doing governance together, although of course that is very important and I love that part. It is also partnering to share ministry, in which way we are able to kind of amplify and make bigger all of our own individual efforts. So together we might send youth to the Triennium, which is a national youth convention. We might share together in food distribution ministry. Pastors can take turns moderating session for other congregations when their pastor has departed or is on vacation. And members and pastors work together to provide a presence outside of immigration court locations. So that is a little bit about the presbytery. I have been here for about a year and a half. So in August will, I think, be my 6th presbytery meeting. I am not from here. I was born in San Francisco, but I didn't grow up here. My parents are like East Bay kids. They met at Cal, all of that. But I grew up in Eastern Oregon and Western Washington, so it's particularly lovely to be back with all of my extended family where I belong and to be with all of you. So I'm grateful to be here with you. Let us pray. Holy One, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, our rock and redeemer. Amen. Have you ever really wanted something, like a degree or a certain job, or for all my 80s kids out there, a brand name jean jacket? Most of us have some kind of dream or aspiration. Sometimes we think it would be something that'd be cool to do, right? Like a bucket list. Maybe we have a place that we want to visit one day, or something special we want to do. Or sometimes our aspirations are something that would be significant for our family, like an education. And our guy Jacob here, I really made you all work by having these 2 very long passages, and you really hung in there. That's awesome. So we're going to talk about both of them. But this dude Jacob, he aspires to marry the woman he loves for her beauty. And we all have a dream, am I right? So we're going to back up a little minute. You remember about Jacob. You remember what happened before Jacob even. So Rebekah, Jacob's mother, helped him trick his mostly blind elderly father Isaac into blessing him, Jacob, with the blessing intended for the firstborn son, who was not Jacob. That was Esau. So he effectively stole his elder brother's blessing and then had to leave. So Esau, his elder brother, had married women his parents didn't like, and they sent Jacob away, telling him not to marry someone from the same group of people from which Esau's wives came, and they told him he could marry a cousin. So on his journey to find his uncle, God blesses Jacob and his descendants. The story of Jacob is juicy. This is fun stuff. So by the time we read this, after reading the story of Jacob for generations, we might gloss over some of the weirder things to our contemporary ears, like how Jacob, a thief and a cheater, is the recipient of such extravagant divine blessing. And in this passage, of course, we only read this narrow slice of the Jacob story, which is on the whole, a much larger story to indicate how the covenant promises of God passed from Abraham and Isaac to the generations through Jacob. And this particular reading is about how Jacob gains a wife or wives and 2 handmaids, all of whom give birth to the tribes of Israel, one of whom is Joseph, the one who was sold by his elder brothers into enslavement in Egypt and ends up saving the entire family, all of it, the extended family, during a famine. So then Jacob arrives here at the household of his uncle Laban and becomes a freeloader, like just hanging out, not really doing anything. And after a month, Laban is like, you should do something. So suggests that he work for something in return, like a wage, an act that would have been inappropriate in this context. This was a wealthy household with slaves. They didn't need a worker that they had to pay. But Jacob offers this extravagant bride price, 7 years of labor for your daughter. And we notice, maybe in the text, that Laban doesn't necessarily explicitly accept this for Rachel. He just doesn't say no. And so we end up with what some people might call a situationship. After working for 7 years, Jacob marries the elder sister Leah, consummating the marriage under the cover of night, only to discover that he has been tricked in the light of the morning. He goes to Laban to protest, hey man, this isn't fair, this isn't what we discussed, who explains that in his culture, they don't give the younger before the elder, and Jacob must complete his wedding obligations of a week, and then Laban gives him Rachel in exchange for another 7 years of labor. There is, later in the Bible, a biblical prohibition against marrying two sisters while they are both alive, but that comes up in Leviticus, and Jacob's story actually happens earlier. And it's just interesting that all this stuff is in the Bible, but that's probably another sermon. And while there is a part of me that feels I should be respectful to my elders, Jacob is one of the most significant figures in our religious genealogy. But there are a lot of things about this story that are distasteful for us in our contemporary cultural context, not the least of which is purchasing women, polygamy, and marrying your own cousin. And then later on in this story, we learn how Zilpah, the maid who is enslaved and gifted to Leah upon her marriage, and Bilhah, the maid given to Rachel, also give birth to some of Jacob's children. So we can add number 4 egregious example, sleeping with your household staff, an abuse of power and exploitation of people who do not have access to any other power or authority. Also, we come back to that part where Jacob is like a cheater, right? It was the same person who cheated his elder brother out of the blessing by pretending to be him. And then the cheater is cheated by Laban giving the elder daughter without telling Jacob what's really happening. And that's interesting. In his aspirations and the plan he and his mother have for his future, he gets a little bit messed with. Some people, not us, might say that's karma. We don't believe in that religion. But in a way, it kind of works out for him, right? And it works out for the nation of Israel. We do end up with the 12 tribes. So notice here in the story that God does not seem to interfere in the cultural practices of the day. God doesn't bust through like a feminist superhero to tell off the misogynists and make it clear women are people too. This isn't a very clean story. The women also do not rise above the competition of who is loved, who is beautiful, who gives birth to more children, and who struggles with infertility. The maid are still slaves used for their reproductive capacity. We know family dynamics kind of like this. Clearly not exactly like this. We don't do that thing anymore. But we may have known some families where there is like the ambitious one, the one who always seems to be pregnant with another kiddo, the one who can never seem to get pregnant, the siblings vying for attention, the one who's like a little more homely, bless her heart, and the pretty one. So we are also familiar with women in our context being reduced to their appearance and their motherhood status. What we are told in this story is that God can work even through the messiest of situations. So often we focus on the main character, right? The protagonist, Jacob, even though he's, problematic maybe. And through him and his descendants is created the people, the nation of Israel. The primary lesson of the scripture we learn from God's work through him. But we can also look to see what becomes of the minor characters in this story, to see God working in the margins, along the sidelines. And even in what feels like a very messy, dysfunctional situation, in a family dynamic that feels like kind of a lot, God takes care of the women in their immediate situation, ensuring they are the mothers through whom the people of Israel become. The maids are given names, a dignity extended to precious few women and servants throughout the scriptures. And it is clear that Jacob could not be the father of Israel without these women. Leah may have been forced to marry someone who doesn't love her or want her, but further on in Genesis, we learn God blesses her with so many children, giving her higher standing in the household and also providing her with family members who love her and treasure her as she deserves. And Rachel struggles with infertility. Jacob loves her. She does eventually give birth to 2 sons, one of whom is Joseph, the clear favorite, if you remember, of Jacob, who then pays the price of being the favorite. The story does not get easier deeper into the book of Genesis. The women continue to compete. We never get to hear how they feel about anything. And just because God can work in this almost complete mess does not mean that we here in our situations have to settle for waiting to glimpse these little bites of divine in between the bigger pieces of mess. We do not have to accept suffering as our inevitable lot with these little tiny moments of joy. This story is a little like living here in the United States. It is lovely, it is ours, and it is so hard to be here sometimes when we know armed agents of the state are stalking people who committed the crime of being born somewhere else or being stuck in the middle of a slow asylum process. All people deserve liberation, homes to sleep in, and schools where they can learn without being bombed. We do not have to settle for the veneer of freedom, our little corners here and there of liberation, the slivers of places we feel safe. And instead of settling for crumbs, we can notice the opportunities we have to cultivate in the space we are given. Perhaps the 4 women of this biblical story are not able to choose the father of their children, but I like to think that they were the shaping power of the household, choosing how to raise these children who were theirs. We have a level of opportunity to find the small wins in the midst of fighting for bigger ones, able to carve out space to spread our own faith and convictions that all the world is love. This is like the mustard seed in the Gospel of Matthew. And this passage from Matthew, it's kind of a lot. I confess, it's like chock full of metaphors. We could spend a whole sermon on each single one. And I love a good metaphor. That's what gives us such great poetry and beautiful songs. Say, the kingdom of heaven to me, and I think that's kind of a big deal. It feels like a really big dream or aspiration. And these metaphors kind of shift that and bring it back down to earth. The kingdom of heaven, it sounds so big and grand, and it is like a mustard seed, the smallest seed that someone took and sowed in their field. A mustard seed which starts out this big and grows into a shrub and then into a tree was not something someone typically intended to cultivate. It's a weed, something to root out and to burn, wild, an invasive species messing up tidy rows in the fields. The kingdom of heaven is like yeast that a woman took and mixed. And leavening yeast, we picture beautifully risen loaves. But then yeast was considered unclean, which is why in Passover one cannot have any leavening or yeast in the house. A baker has to allow a part of the dough to spoil just enough to help future bread rise, but not so much that it results in food poisoning, which could be deadly in the ancient Near East. It's nicer to focus on the valuable pearls sought by the merchant than on the weeds or by the potentially fatal bread dough. And if anything, this gives us a glimpse into something about God as Jesus understood God. Common people, common activities. This is where the holy is found. Not in grand mountaintops or lush manicured gardens, but in the kitchen, in the back, or in the scrub where mustard invades. Where I grew up in Western Washington, blackberry bushes were thought of the way people in the Southeast think of kudzu, or maybe some of you might think of bamboo. So to clear an area, people were known to poison or blast their way through these invasive bushes because they were super hardy and healthy. They were so common, one could stop along any roadside in the summer to pick blackberries, but they were a scourge for homeowners, anyone who wanted to build something or, just not have a bunch of prickly branches in the back. That is the mustard bush. It's so common in certain areas, one assumes they're everywhere, showing up in inconvenient locations without being planted, just these little annoying volunteers. And despite all we might wish for ourselves and others, God will still move. Leah will still become the mother of tribes. Jacob will still thrive under his trickster uncle. Rachel is so deeply loved, even though she did not live long or produce many children, and loved for who she is, not for what she does. Two maids, not free to choose their family, give birth to the nation. And the story of these people, the people of Israel, unfolds through this deeply messy narrative. Now, if God can use a weed or a potentially fatal element used in baking, or an enslaved woman, or the less pretty sister, or the liar to spread the good news, why can't God use each one of us? For the past couple of years, I've been a member of a particular gym because, we all have to work something out, and I want to be able to stand up when I'm older. And so this gym was part of a group of gyms owned by one of those big conglomerates, right? Faceless, nameless company with a generic name. This company sold several of its local gyms to another company with another generic name that then chose to shut down 2 locations. And one of them was my gym, and the other one was very close to me, like a mile away, and consolidate all of us into locations that were really kind of inconvenient. And I know that a gym is optional, right? That's an extra expense. And I know my membership is just someone else's profit, just a line on a balance sheet. But the group of us that worked out at this gym, we'd already started hanging out. We have a little WhatsApp group, and we have a trivia team. So when our gym closure was announced, we got really upset, and we organized. We started a petition, we canvassed the neighborhood, we contacted the owner of the building to find out if they were charging too much rent where the gym was located. We found a city council person who would listen to us. We collected data on who might cancel their membership and testimonials on how much people loved the gym staff and the location. And you know what happened as a result? We did not prevent the gym from being closed. The gym still closed, a lot of people canceled and found somewhere else to work out. But we had a really big party after the last workout on the day it closed. We made the staff feel like we really cared about them and appreciated all they had done. And now we have a carpooling spreadsheet in our WhatsApp group so we can get to the new gym together because not everyone has a car. And a friend group that is really committed to each other. When we go work out together, we take selfies after each one. We go to movies together. We still have our trivia team. When we talk about aspirations, sometimes we are talking about something we may never attain, something big and grand and maybe unrealistic. But these aspirations here, the work of God, the work of loving the world around us, this is real. It is concrete. It is grounded right here, right now. It can spread like an invasive weed in the best way. May it be so.